Hello everyone, this is Maureen and welcome to My Crochet Story, where I share with you the two things that I love, teaching and crochet. Today's series, Basic Stitches, is number 3 and we'll be looking at the double crochet. Now the double crochet is just a little bit different than your single crochet and your half double crochet, but folks, it's easy because if you did number 2, which was the half double crochet, it starts out just like the half double crochet. The only thing is that we're going to learn how to take that half double crochet and extend it and make it a little taller, which causes it to be a full double crochet stitch. Now what are we going to do with that double crochet stitch today? Let me show you. Remember, whenever I teach you a new stitch, I want you to have enough practice so that you can create for yourself something to show off what you are learning. So today, folks, look, a nice, simple little beanie. Now, this beanie has many different ways in which you can personalize it, make it your own. This one's just really simple. We can extend it so that we can roll it up. Roll this up a little bit. Give it a nice little band. We can extend it and make it a slouchy beanie. Or we can shorten it and just make it a really traditional beanie. Now, not only are we going to learn how to make the stitch, we're going to also learn how to make a seam so that we can put this together. There are going to be many different ways of seaming items together. I'm going to show you one today while we're learning the stitch and how to gather the end to give it a nice closed top. Other ways that you can change up the beanie. You can put a pom-pom on top, whether it be a fuzzy one that you buy at the store or one that you make. So let's get started. Remember, we need a nice pale colored yarn, 4-weight or worsted yarn, which is what we're working with right now. Your trusty aluminum J hook. Remember, we're using the aluminum right now because it's light on the hands and it's easy to maneuver. Gives us a nice tall stitch, fat stitch, so that we can see what it is that we're doing. So gather up your yarn, your hook, and right after the intermission, we'll get started. See you in a minute. All right, so before we get started, I want to remind you that we are working with a 4-weight or worsted yarn. Also, I will be working in a nice blue color. Remember that I said that since we're just beginning to learn our stitches, that you want to stay away from dark colors, the variegated yarns, just because it makes it a little harder for you to see your stitches. We'll also be using our J aluminum hook or a 6mm hook. Now, before we get started, I wanted to show you, I had to cut off this little piece of my yarn because at some point it became nasty looking. Looks like where it was coming apart. Let me show you here, get some of this thread out of the way. See how that kind of came unwound there? You don't want to crochet with that. You want to make sure that you cut off a good length to make sure that there's no other problems. Get that out of the way. You want to start with a nice strong piece of yarn. So again, if you remember from our very first lesson in the Basic Stitch series, I showed you different ways in which to tie on. I like to use my yarn by crossing an X on the back side of my first 2 fingers where I have my parallel lines in the front, and go under the first loop, hook up the back loop, turn over, take your 2 threads and tighten it onto your hook by pulling the main or working yarn. Now, as I said in the intro, we are going to be learning how to do the double crochet. Now, as always, we've got to start out by building a chain. So what I want you to do is, again, I want you to chain 60 chains. All right, so remember that in order to make a chain, we loop our thread and pull it through our loop here, the loop that's on our hook. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. So hopefully by now you know how to make a chain, how to adjust your tension, keep it nice and consistent, and how to work your hook, whether you're using the pencil style that I'm using or you're using the knife style, which I cannot do. All right. So I will meet you back in just a moment after we have 60 chains. Make sure you're either counting as you go or you count whenever you get finished to make sure that we have 60. And I'll meet you back in just a minute. All right, I'm back. I have my 60 chains, and so now I'm ready to start my second row, in which I will be building my double crochets. So we're going to chain one more, and this time, working again in the second chain from the hook, we are going to put our first double crochet. So in order to create a double crochet, it starts out just like the half double crochet. We're going to loop our yarn around our hook, going to go into the top loop of our chain, yarn over, and pull up a loop. And just like the half double crochet, we're going to have 3 loops on our hook. But this time when we yarn over and pull through, we're only going to pull through 2 of the stitches. So yarn over, pull through 2 stitches. Sometimes you'll hear people say drop the first 2 stitches. Now I still have 2 stitches on my hook, so I'm going to yarn over, pull through 2 again, and that makes my that makes my double crochet. Now your first one in your row is always going to look a little different, maybe a little fatter, because of this chain one that we start with, but that's okay. It'll level out when we get to the end of the row and come back, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But that's just how I like to start my rows. I always start with a chain 1 and then with the official stitch that we're working with. A lot of patterns will call for you to chain 2 and tell you to count that chain 2 as a double crochet. I personally don't like that, especially if you have to go back and do some seaming. To me, that always leaves a big hole. So I was not taught to do that. But, you know, we all learn differently. We all find styles that we like. And so this is just a style that works for me. So let's continue on and we'll see how these double crochets stack up against each other. So again, we're going to yarn over, go into the top loop of the next chain, grab our yarn, pull it through. There's our 3 loops. Pull through 2. And pull through 2 again. Let's do that again. Now remember, it's okay if we have this little hole here, because eventually all our stitches will settle down as we're working through the chain. So yarn over, go through the hoop, loop, pull up. There's our 3 loops. Yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2 again. So now do you start seeing our double crochets there? Yarn over, go through our loop, 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through 2, and pull through 2 again. Let's keep practicing for a few more and then we'll stop a moment. Yarn over, go through the top loop of the chain, yarn over, 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. Again, yarn over, top loop of the chain, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, pull through 2 loops. I'm going to do just a couple of more and then we're going to stop. All right, now as you can see, there is our double crochet. Now, again, it starts out just like our half double crochet, but instead of pulling through all 3 loops that are on our hook, we drop 2 loops at a time. This also creates a little bit taller stitch than the half double crochet. This is nice whenever you're wanting to get through rows quickly. It also is a nice setup stitch for when we're doing front post and back post. It's a great bridge from any stitch to the next when you need maybe just something to set up with or to fill in. The double crochet is used for a lot of other stitches, like when we're making shells and puffs, when we're doing crochets together. It's just a really nice stitch to have in your arsenal. So let's continue. Yarn over, pull up, drop 2 again. There's our completed double crochet. Continue on along. Now remember, as I told you in our other 2 lessons, you don't want to rush this first row here of working with your chains, because most of the time this is the edge of your project and you want it to look nice and consistent and even. Even if you're going to leave it like this, or if you're going to come back through and use this bottom edging here to possibly put fringe on or a different kind of border, you still want to take your time and make sure that this beginning row with your chain is nice, consistent, pretty. So again, take your time. If you need to back up the video to make sure that you're understanding how to create the stitch, do so. And I will meet you in a few moments at the end of the chain, probably within about 2 or 3 stitches, so we can see how we're going to end this up. Okay? See you in just a few minutes. All right. I'm coming to the end of my chain here. I have about 5 or 6 left. I hope you have taken your time, made sure that your stitches are nice and even. They all look pretty much alike. And don't forget this very last chain here where it looks like it's part of your knot. It's not. It's your very first chain. Don't forget him. Now I'm going to take just a moment and I'm going to go through here and count to make sure that I have 60 double crochets. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 42, 44, 46, 48, 50, 52, 54, 56, 58, 59, and 60. Now, no, get down. Now, we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. Now remember, that chain 1 does not count as anything, nor does the loop on your hook. So we're going to go right back into this stitch from our last row, yarn over, go in, pull up our loop, drop 2, and drop 2 again. And as I said, this first double crochet here, because we're working off of a chain 1, is always going to look just a little bit different on the top, but that's okay. Yarn over, go into the next stitch, and remember we're going to go through both stitches, or both loops of the stitch. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over for 2, yarn over for 2. Yarn over, go through, going under both stitches there, or both loops, excuse me. Yarn over, 3 loops, pull through 2, pull through 2. And we're going to continue down our row, making those beautiful double crochets. And just like with the half double crochet, remember I told you can see how they stack up on top of one another. And if you go slow in the beginning when you're learning a new stitch, it helps you to avoid making mistakes and getting frustrated. This is not a speed race. And when you're making projects, it never should be about speed, folks. It should be about creating something beautiful that you'll be proud of. I don't want you getting frustrated. I want you to enjoy what you're learning and what you are creating. So please do not make it about how fast can I get through this. Crochet is meant to be a very nice, relaxing adventure in working thread in different stitches and creating something beautiful. All right, so I will meet you at the end of this row. All right, I am coming to the end of our second row. Now, this is that, let me get to this last stitch here. Now, you might look at that and think that you're at the end of the row, but you're not, because this is the very first double crochet that we created. So we're going to come in and pick up that loop and finish off with our last double crochet. Now, like I've told you before, you're going to want to stop just a minute. We need to go back and count. All right, some of you may think that this is unnecessary. And I would say as you become a seasoned crocheter, you should be able to look at your project and see if you have the correct number of stitches. But folks, I still count my stitches on projects large or small because I hate having to frog. I'm not saying I don't frog, because I will make mistakes, but on something like this, especially in the very beginning, please take just a moment to make sure that you go back and count your number of stitches. Now we're supposed to have 60 stitches, so turn the top of your work here, find your first one. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 42, 44, 46, 48, 50, 52, 54, 56, 58, and 60. Put my hook back in there, tighten my yarn back down, and chain 1, turn our work. Loop over. Remember that the loop and that chain 1 does not count as a stitch, so I'm going to yarn over and go right into this first stitch here. 3 loops, drop 2, drop 2 again, and there's my first double crochet for the 3rd row. Yarn over, pull up a loop, go through 2, go through 2, and we're off and running again for a 3rd row of double crochets. So continue on, and I'll meet you at the end of this 3rd row of double crochets. All right, I'm coming to the end of my 3rd row. And don't forget that we'll be going into this very last stitch, and you can always tell it's your last stitch, especially from the technique that I use, because this loop here is always going to be a little bit bigger than the rest of them, but that's okay. I also like using the technique of just chaining 1 and starting with my stitch, because as you can see, it gives a nice clean edge here, which is important to me, especially if I'm going to use it to put 2 ends together. It gives me a nice clean edge in which to work in to when I want to say make a sleeve, okay, or the edge of the front and back panels that I need to sew together on a cardigan. All right, chain 1, turn your work. Now hopefully you know, even though I'm not going to do it this time, to take just a moment, count your stitches, and we should still have 60 stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and start with row 4. And just keep going. And I will meet you at the end of row 4, and then I will give you your homework and tell you what our project is going to be once you've completed your homework of practicing making double crochets. All right, so see you at the end of row 4. All right, hopefully by this point you have 20 rows, as we talked about. I, on the other hand, have let me pull this down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Now I'm having to stop on row 16 because I do not have that much yarn left, and I don't have another skein in which to finish it out to 16 rows. But that's okay, because what we are going to do next works whether you have 16, 18, 20, however many rows that you need. So what we're going to do with this textile that we've created is we're going to lap this over, just like we did if you completed the half double crochet project and we made the little ear warmer. Well, this is going to be a slouchy hat. Now, if you completed the 20 rows like I asked you to do, it will be a very nice little slouchy hat. This one, however, will make a nice just hat for my grandson because he's not into slouchies. My girls, on the other hand, they love them, but this will have to work for him. But what I'm going to show you in building the slouchy hat works the same. Now, just like we did with the ear warmer, we are going to come along the edge here and we are going to make a seam by joining the two edges together. So let's do that first. I'm going to cut me a pretty good length of yarn here. Now you don't have to cut yours as long as I do, but I'm going to cut me a pretty good piece. I'm going to get it onto my needle here. And again, I still have not found my needle threader, but just wiggle it through there enough to get it through. Okay. Now I'm going to take my excess yarn here and pull it off over here to the side. And let's get going. This through. All right. So what we're going to do is, since I did not tie that off with my hook, I'm going to tie it off with my needle by pulling it through that loop so that it secures this stitch over here on the end. Alright, and just like we did with the half double crochet rows, we're going to take the edge of our double crochet rows, line them up, and slip stitch them together. So I'm going to start from the back side here, going into my first stitch of that row and the first stitch of this row, and going over the top. Now again, you don't have to make yours quite as long as I did, but and I'm going to go over it one more time just to make sure that it locks that edge in nice and tight. All right, and then just as I said, we're going to line up our edges here row by row. Now some people like to take and put stitch markers or little clips to hold the rows in place. I just do mine by every couple of rows, line them up, and then start stitching. And again, like I've said before, I like to make sure I have 2 loops from each side that I'm pulling together. And we're just gonna pull a stitch over. From back to front, excuse me. And again, I don't want to do it real tight because I want to give it some give. Because you know this is going to be stretching, going over around your head. And make sure those rows are lined up. Going to my next 2 rows, lining them up. Just continue all the way till you get to the other end. Now, if you did not cut your string long enough and you have to add more yarn, you can tie it to the end of the yarn you're working on now. Or you can just tie it off and come back in with new thread. This is kind of one reason why I like to make a long tail, so I don't have that issue. But sometimes I don't cut it long enough and I do have to add more yarn as I'm stitching up my seams. Just continue along the edge, matching it up. And I'll see you when we get to the end. Now I bet you were wondering, Maureen, how in the world is this going to turn into a slouchy hat? Looks just like a big old tube at the moment, doesn't it? But have faith, my little butterfly. It will turn into a hat here in just a minute, because I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. Alright, making my last stitch here at the end, and because it is the end, again, I'm going to put another loop there just to secure it off. Alright, what we're going to do now, look at that. Isn't that nice? Now I'm not quite ready to, I will show you what it looks like when you turn it inside out. Or right side out, I guess I should say. There you go. That's what you have. It's a nice closed seam. Don't have to worry about it coming apart. Okay. Alright, but now I'm going to take and turn it back, because I still want to work on the inside here. Back up here at my top. Okay, make sure my string is out. Alright, so now what we're going to do in order to make this the top of our hat is we're going to start now picking up every few little pieces, and we're going to gather it onto our hook and onto our yarn here. So I'm going to go up underneath each one of these little chains here. You'll notice that this is the bottom chain of your chain that you started with. So we're going to go right in here, go in and out, in and out, in and out. And this is how we're going to gather up the top. Now you'll find your yarn there to kind of twist on you a little bit. See how it's going to gather or pucker it. Alright, so that's coming out there. I'm going to go in here and out, there, out, there, out. Now you just want to go in and out between those stitches. Now if you needed to at some point to add more yarn, that's fine. I just happened to cut an extra long piece, because I never know how much yarn I'm going to need. I'd rather have too much than not enough. So here we go again, in and out, in and out, in and out. Get some more of that gathered up, and I'm going to do that all the way around. Turn this a little bit. See how it's starting to gather up now? There we go. So as I said, I'm just going to continue going all the way around, just picking up a few threads going in, picking up a few threads going out. So I can get that gathered. And I'll keep pulling on it as I go along. Now I tend to keep my stitches when I'm gathering a little tighter than some folks. If you wish to spread your stitches out just a little bit more, that's fine. I'm just closer that way. Some folks skip every other stitch or every 2 stitches. And as you can see, when we come back around, it gets a little hard right in there to see where to go, but just wiggle it in there enough to pull it up, pull it through. Alrighty. And then just pull it tight. And what I do at this point then is I make sure all of my edges are kind of poking up. Don't let them fall down in there. Make sure all your little gathered edges are up as tight as you can get them. Now pull it tight. And then from this point, I will just make a second round. Maybe get that tail out of the way there. There we go. Make a second round and just go through the gather of the gathers. I want this to be nice and tight up here. Some folks will start going crisscross, crisscross, and that's good too, but I just like to do an additional little gathering of the gathers before I start doing that. All right, and now we'll just close it off by going across every little bit. Come back across this way, just grab you some. And go back across this way. Just want to make sure that the top here is nice and closed. I think I'll go one more time here. I said one more time, didn't I? All right. And I think I'll do 2 this way. Or maybe just 1. Yeah, I'll just bring it back over here. All right. Now what I'm going to do is just snip off an end piece here. And this is my tail from my beginning. I'm just going to take these 2 and tie her down. I do this 3 or 4 times. And since, folks, this is going to be on the inside, I'll just leave about an inch tail and cut that off. So now when I turn it over, there is my beanie or my hat. Now, of course, if you made this the 20 rows, yours is going to be longer than mine. All right. Which will allow this to slouch over the top of your head. But you know, even at 16 rows, it makes a nice little hat. With the slouchy, you can turn it up and have a little brim if you like. Turn it from a regular hat, from a slouchy into a regular hat. So there's lots of different ways that you can wear this. Really easy hat to make. Again, you can adjust it as far as size is concerned by the number of chains that you use starting out. And obviously, you can adjust it by the height. All right, I hope that you did not feel intimidated by the little bit of stitch work that we had to do in order to get this double crochet practice project completed. I think it turned out wonderful. I love making this pattern, especially from scrap materials that I have. I'll just pick up some pieces that I have, start with it, and when it runs out, I'll add another color and just keep going. It's a nice way to use up our little ends and pieces, because I'm definitely not throwing this away, folks. And those of you who are just starting to crochet, get yourself a Ziploc baggie and put your leftover pieces in it, especially if it's not any bigger than the palm of your hand. I promise you, you will find something to do with this. Later on, I'll have a series coming out called Granny Squares, and this is perfect for those kinds of little projects. Okay? So, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the double crochet. I hope you completed it and came up with your own little beanie or slouchy hat. As always, thank you for stopping by. If you were a newbie and just watched through the video, I hope that you will consider subscribing to my channel. Hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any of my tutorials that come out, and my sharing of happy mails, I've got a little piece of good news I'd like to share, yarn reviews, things that I feel like might be of interest to you out there in the yarny community. Look forward to another tutorial of the basic stitches that will be released next week. If you are in for a little bit of adventure and want to stretch your learning skills so far, hop on over to Moving On Up, in which we take some of our basic stitches and start incorporating them into combinations that make up some of our more intricate stitches. Alrighty, so again, thank you so much for joining me. As always, be safe, be kind to one another, and remember to be the light in the darkness for someone today, because you never know, it might just be your light that they need to see. I love you all. Bye.